Hi, Rich Hoffman here. I guess there needs to be some economic lessons, and I know there's a lot of smart people out there who do economics for a living, and they are really upset about the Trump tariffs. And I've heard some of the dumbest things said lately that I think I've ever heard in regard to economic theory. And so they're pretty upset about these tariffs for some reason. And I can only say that I think a lot of people have been suckered by globalism, and that they accepted economic global ideas in the post-World War II era that were not good for the United States and should have never been adopted, and that Trump's tariffs are going to redo the mistakes that were made after World War II. There's a global order that was headed towards this entire socialist, communist division of wealth redistribution, and it really started before World War I. If you really know your history, you can go back and say that easily the two world wars that we had, World War I, World War II, were constructs of globalism to incite the world against each other so they could remake it with a toppled regimes that would then create a one world management system. And in the background was all this finance. You'll find the fingers of people in finance who wanted to rule without being the rulers, who wanted to manipulate and tamper with all the elected classes that are out there and overthrow republics by controlling how much debt they maintained. It doesn't matter if you're president of a country, if you were beholden to debt and everyone was living off the interest rates that really ran the world. And so they remade the world in their image based on the debts incurred by all these wars. And if you really poke in under the curtain, you see that there was a lot of people from finance blowing on the embers of discontent to push some of these elements into global conflicts. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's just a knowledge of history. And the mistakes made from all that, the United States has become the facilitator of massive wealth redistribution. They use the capitalist system of the United States to collapse the United States and then steal the wealth for countries they wanted to remake, like China, to prop them up. Without the United States, I've always said it, China would be nothing. Europe would be nothing. Very few countries in the world would be anything without the wealth generated by the United States. So you take the United States out as a player, and nobody really has anything, because most of them are Marxist and communist socialist countries, and their economies struggle without the United States being involved. And without the United States being a capitalist country, the financial model always struggles, and that's what a lot of these centralized bankers never really figured out. But they're the ones that cast us into this whole thing, made it so that we have the problems we do have today. And when we look around and we see the jobs that have left and gone to other places, and why they have gone, and why corporations have steered themselves in directions where they wanted to survive by the new rules of conduct that is part of this new world order, everyone was making bets based on that, and that includes all the people that handle mutual funds and 401k plans of any kind. BlackRock's of the world. You saw Larry Fink's not all that happy about it. Everybody knows I'm not a fan of Larry Fink, even though he's been trying to play nice with the Trump administration, with the Panama Canal situation, trying to be a broker between China and the United States. Well, they have their own interests in mind, and they're deep into China, and all these characters have bet on the demise of the United States and the remaking of the world of this one world government, the World Economic Forum stuff. We haven't been talking about very much, but if you remember what Trump said at the last World Economic Forum seminar they had, everyone was kind of bootlicking him and being very nice and considerate and to his face, because behind his back, they have daggers out, and they would love to see it into him, and they find it hard to believe that the United States elected a guy like Trump, because they had built the system to destroy people like him, so they would never be in office, and that would wreck and people like him wouldn't wreck all the investments they have made into the demise of the United States, stealing its wealth and giving it to everybody else and around the world who run these socialist and Marxist countries. This was never a sustainable model. It was always going to fall apart. I tell the people who have been looking at these stock Dow Jones rankings in the upper 30s and 40s, thinking that this was going to go on forever. It was all built on phony money, and I've been telling everybody that for quite a long time. I explained the disingenuous relationship that BlackRock has had with the Federal Reserve and how the Federal Reserve has been printing money, quantitative easing, and just dumping it in with no value to it. And they print it as much as they want, and then they go out and buy up all these distressed companies that are forced into closures because of predatory lending. And then the next buyer becomes someone like China, and they pick it up and they move it somewhere else because they have to, because the rules of doing business in the United States is too rough, too hard for them. So they can't function because the debts are just so leveraged against them. And then you end up with the catastrophes you see, and everyone's wondering, well, what can I do about it? Well, Trump's doing something about it. He's fixing it. And he's fixing it in a way that it should have been fixed all along. So it took someone to have guts to do it the way it needed to be done, and it just hasn't been dealt with the entire time. The entire time since World War II. We haven't seen anybody truly tackle the issue it needed to be. And that really comes down to, if you look at your mortgage, I look at all mortgages as kind of a Ponzi scheme. They're not based on true value. Every generation expects the next generation to fund the profits of the previous one, which to me is a Ponzi scheme. Even though your value might be a house, the house has its best value when it was first built, because as it gets older, it starts depreciating. It starts getting, you have to fix things on it all the time, and it's not what it was when it first started. But yet, the price of the house goes up with every generation thereafter. And at some point, you get a diminishing marginal return, which is kind of where we've arrived at in that kind of Ponzi scheme market. People can't afford to buy those houses anymore because they can't afford to pay for the profits of the previous generation. So that's what you have going on in the stock market. It's been jacked up. You took all your production, all your manufacturing that has real true value, your gold standard stuff, and you moved it offshore, gave it to the socialist and communist countries to micromanage with centralized government means production, and then you thought one world government was going to run it all. And it was never going to run it all. And you built the entire financial system off of that. Well, whose fault's that? The world that did it. All the bankers and finance people who did it. So those are the ones that are in a panic because they bet on the wrong horse. And they bet on America to be in a state of demise and to roll over into some United Nations control. And now that we're turning inward and saying we're going to keep value where value is made, which is in our industries, our production facilities, and our domestic supply, and if the world wants what we have to buy, they can buy it. And if you're going to charge us a tariff, we'll charge you a tariff, and we're going to get everything equalized. And there's going to be trillions and trillions of dollars of money generated. And I think the rate of resolution is going to be very fast. It's going to happen in months, and within a few years, you're going to see a totally different economy, and Americans are going to be very happy with it. And by the time you have the next congressional races, Republicans are going to be looking really good. And the Trump administration by itself is going to look wonderful, and they know it. That's why you have to do it now, because you need to give it time to work. But the world is going to be realigned to a pre-Jekyll Island economy, not just World War I or World War II. We're resetting the value towards the capitalist endeavors that the United States specifically makes, and because you are going to take away all the looters in the background, stealing wealth through lots of nefarious means, that practice is being put to an end with this tariff issue, and that's why people are so upset. And I would expect more people to understand that's what's going on, but they don't, and they're upset at Trump for making them face the facts that this was a Ponzi scheme all along, a lot of the way the world was built around finance, and it's going to be realigned. And those who who invested heavily in that destruction of America are going to, of course, lose a lot of money. And if you're one of them, well, phooey on you. You bet on the wrong horse. You should have never bet against the United States. You should never bet against the, capitalism versus Marxism, socialism, and all these left-wing policies that the rest of the world does adhere to. And they have been living off the profits of the United States for their entire existence. And we've been funding essentially all these detrimental schemes that the world has been a part of. And we're not doing it anymore. And great on Trump. That's why we said Trump there, and good he's got the guts to do it. And the time it's going to take to fix it is going to be fairly short. I don't see it being a long duration. It's a couple years tops, but it's something that had to be done, and it was always going to need to be done. It's like the house you bought, and you bought it for $50,000 and you expect to sell it 30 years later for $300,000. How long can you go like that? Not very long. You got to reset the clock somewhere, redo the economy, and put value where value really matters, which is what these tariffs do and what Trump's doing as a head of the executive branch at this particular juncture in history. That's going to be critical and should have been done about 40 years ago, but it's being done now, and I think it's great. And people who are too short-sighted to see it, it's on you, because this is a good thing, and it's something that's necessary for the sustainability of the United States, because the rest of the world does depend on us. And if we don't have value and we don't survive, none of the rest of them do either. And that's why it's critical to do. And I think a lot of people in the United States are going to be very well off financially because of it, because this is where the value is created anyway. That's where we need to put the value for building an economy of the future. And the rest of the world will benefit, just not in the looting financial way that it's been set up now. And it's never a sustainable model. Anyway, it's Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you haven't read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, I think you'll love it. Anyway, have a good day. See you later.